Good morning. We seem to be streaming. We will wait until our monitor picks it up and we do a bit of an audio check. I can see that the lines are good. The last few streams has been operating off the good microphone, and it seems that we are completely live and online. So just give me a few seconds to listen in for a second. Yeah, about 10, 20 seconds delay. It's not a big deal. So let's do this. What I have in front of me is a lot of parts, obviously. We are looking after the legs of the Master Grade Bandai Providence Gundam. I've sort of been doing a really big modification hoo-ha around this kit. And the last few streams has all been about decaling the Providence, some sub-assembly, though a lot of the modification has been done at work away from the camera. The stuff that I could do, the stuff that I don't need specialty tools, just the toolbox, some time, some patience, and whatnot. And I live about half the week away from home in the city, and I go around with a small toolbox. So what we have here is the leg that we've been modifying, and you can see that the inner detail and whatnot's coming through. We've got a vent, we've got a little bit of a flap thing going on there. And today we're going to just clean it up, add a little more detail, and that's about it. It should be finished, and we can work on some other parts. I have approximately 6 weeks to finish this project. Most of it's painted. There is a bucket load of decaling that will take a couple of weeks. I just need to get this and the backpack finished ASAP. So everything is on a decent scheduled plan. For tonight, or this morning, I'll be cleaning the inside. I cut it open with an ultrasonic knife, cleaned it up with a knife, filed, sanded it, and there's little bits of imperfections and cuts and whatnot. I utilized the Mr. Hobby, Mr. Dissolved Putty, and that's done a lovely job. It's very lumpy and all over the place. Though being such a soft material, I could sand it back down to plastic, and any holes and crevices and whatnot will be nicely covered. I've also added these little flaps. I've got some more flaps to add, and a bit of sanding, and that's about it for detail for this piece. Really, probably something small there, and yeah, that's really about the shtick of it. So I've got water. I'm going to need to pull out some styrene after I do a touch of sanding. Just need to check something for 2 seconds, and we'll deploy our sandpaper. We've got our travelling pieces. I do like to write the grit on the other side so I know what I'm doing, and I can go in sequential order from very rough to soft. And depending on the job, the sanding, everything I'm doing is what sandpaper I choose or intend to use. So, okay, that's all good. Now, being a soft material, we could go straight to 240, and we'll utilize this in a very, very, very soft fashion. Always lubricate your sandpaper, and this layer is going just really, really, really light. We're just rubbing it up and down. It's all very lumpy. It's been mounted on with a toothpick. It's not very even, and it just needs to be cleaned up. The beautiful thing about this material, it's very easy to buff and polish, and it just looks really, really nice on a painted surface. It's absolutely the ultimate in follow-up putty. So what I'm doing is I'm applying a very gentle amount of force It's actually indirectly. I've got the paper folded in half, sitting over the edge, and it's rubbing up and down. The excess material is released into the water. I'm not actually applying any force because the softness of this material and the strength of this sandpaper would absolutely shred it, and would have to putty and start all over again. Once I start using the high grit stuff, then I will be able to apply a bit more pressure. I will have to apply a bit of pressure on the styrene plates that I applied just to round it off slightly, sand around the edges in case there's any glue scarring, and yeah, that is pretty much the gist of it. It's just going around and cleaning up, nothing special whatsoever. Once that's all done, I find that these little flaps are very, very plain, and I need to add something to give it a bit of interest. And looking at the collection of parts and whatnot, I think I can use a minus mold, chop it in half, and stick it on there. That could create a very fascinating and interesting bit of detail. Now, tonight, as usual, wandering around Facebook, having a look at a few modelling communities and whatnot. I've been hanging around some older places where you've got retired individuals and a gentleman that has been modelling since the 70s and 80s, been out of it a while and getting back into it, or they've been continuously modelling since then, on and off, or whatnot. Very passionate gentleman of the hobby, and some really, really enjoyable guys. The range of skills and interests are huge, and there's not a lot of judgmentalism. Does go heavy on the cars and military side of things, though they do like the difference and the out there look of the whole anime and Gundams and all that sort of stuff. Some of them are into it, but out of interest of their colleagues and stuff that don't quite understand it, out of absolute respect, they don't push it too hard. So there are some great places to share around other than your atypical Gundam groups that are mostly filled with a younger audience that has a completely different expectation. There are three groups called Facebook Scale Modeler, Facebook Scale Modeler Global, Facebook Models, Facebook Plastic Models or Scale Models, and one of them is especially very big. The other two are fairly small, and they've been absolute a joy to post and share around. Where I've put the link to this stream is on one of those groups. So anyone who happens to wander in or not, hello, good morning. I'm Alan from Melbourne, Australia. It is a privilege to have you in here and joining a stream and watching some live modeling. Now, I think the best thing about the platform, and the reason why I'm playing here, is obviously there is up-to periods of hours where I sit down and model. Some of them are very short bursts, and it's enjoyable. A little airbrushing, a little decaling, a little here and here, just to get some projects going along. Some of it is filming it for YouTube purposes, and there needs to be a setup and way of doing that to get the best shot. And there's times where I do a real big binge and I sit for about 45 minutes to a few hours and go absolutely hard at it. And I reckon these sessions are the ones that are absolutely ideal for streaming sessions. With a camera on and talking, anyone that comes through, you could just give a live demonstration, live answering questions. So I do enjoy the whole interaction in their comment section and whatnot. But the chance that someone's asking, I don't quite understand something like this, and you can have a one-on-one engagement and show them why there's a whole bypass of chat and groups of people watching. I reckon that would be the ultimate once the Gundam and modeling scene in the streaming community really grows, there's going to be people that are more into that than just snapping at kids and talking about everything from video games to politics to jokes to what they're watching, which is good. And people do tune in and chime in for the personality and the chats, and sort of almost like a chill, relax radio talkback atmosphere with background music. Uh, Background music is a minefield in its own. The copyright and all that. It's something I don't quite want to mess with, as a lot of these are more of a modelling, lecture, discussion, um, conversation type thing. Once they're archived, if there are copyright strikes, Twitch has a tendency of muting them, and you can't hear the audio, but you can see the action, and that's just no fun to watch, and no one's going to watch that. And eventually, I'm going to transfer it to YouTube, and YouTube has their own methods and ways of detecting audio and other copyright bullshittery. Now, going back to the part, so we've been wearing at it away at a little harder momentum with the 320, and it's all nice and flat. It's very smooth. You can see a marbling of a little bit of putty, a little bit of bare plastic. The important thing is it's all smooth. I might need to go a bit sharper in some of the corner spaces, and then I can hit it with the 1000 grit sandpaper and give it a nice polish ready for the paint treatment. So the 1500 here, give the part an overall nice polish, especially the styrene bit. Make it all feel like it's all matching and belonging. And then we start giving the internals a nice good rub down. But yeah, I definitely would like to grow this Twitch thing. The whole I did focus quite heavily on Facebook communities and groups and helping out and chatting and all that. It seriously backfired and didn't work too well. YouTube will always be my home, and that's continually to always work at, and that's where the core work, catalog, portfolio, all of that stays. So it's time to have a second thing, and I won't be on Facebook much at all. But Twitch, that's a whole new thing. When I started and really interacted with the online world, it was all on online forums, and they just had a brilliant way of cataloging work and chatting and building up a record and leaving stuff behind for other people to use, enjoy, and benefit. That is absolutely dead physically, and a lot of the forums are long gone, deleted, not archived, and there's just been so much information that has been lost or locked up or put behind paywalls or just not optimized in a way that it's easily to be found. At least with YouTube does have the platform of being an archived state. It will hold information indefinitely or for a very long period of time. Anyone that puts stuff on websites, on the first few pages, there are things like the Wayback Machine and whatnot that it can be dug up, as long as very long-serving blogs. I do regret I should have kept up a blog or a website, as a lot of stuff that I put out would have been saved. Though I also assume that Facebook is a data center of collecting information, even though it's behind a password wall and it's not beneficial or accessible to everyone who doesn't have a Facebook account, due to disagreement with a certain organization. All of that has been deleted, and that's almost a decade of, or probably close to 7-8 years. 8 years. It's about 8 years of posts, photos, write-ups, all sorts of like forum-style work. And the biggest killer for me, the biggest heartbreak, is the whole documentation of the growth of the Australian gunpla community, the early events, the early workshops, how everything came to be, my involvement, the involvement of pretty much the people who established everything, that's all gone forever. Now, I've backed up everything, and maybe one day I'll slowly post it all up and share it around. But the amount of work it takes to share all that information around is just immense. Managed to get the majority of my catalog up on Pinterest. Now, Pinterest is an amazing platform for research and finding things to either inspire your model or references for your model, be it science fiction, anime, or military, particularly military. There's lots and lots of rare photos, and it builds up a algorithm around your searches, your interests, and what you pin. So you create these boards, find a bunch of photos you like, you pin it, stays in your board. Other people can look at your boards, and it's just a network of things of interest that people are collecting and researching. Some people submit, many people just collect. And I found that to be pretty useful, so I've put the majority of my stuff up there, just builds only, to be archived, and later on they'll branch out to work in progresses, event photos, all sorts of other things. I think that would be the ideal place to document a lot of the early Australian events and other people's builds and that sort of thing. But that's all going to take time, and it will be a few years to post all of those bits and pieces up. Now, going back to the builds, this is piece number 2 out of 4, and we're starting with the 240 and just flattening everything down to make contact with the panel line and the bare plastic. Once that's nice and flat, then we can start refining it and polishing it up with the finer grits. Being a very soft material, even though I did have it heaped up quite heavily, it does have, well, it doesn't have a tendency, it actually outright shrinks. But you're left with an undesirable shape. Though, due to how soft it is, that shape can be conformed, worked, and handled in a way where it flattens to the point where the shape matches the panels, the overall look, and what you're able to achieve. It sort of answers to speed. So that is, that's all pretty good. And I'm very, very overall happy with it. Probably the worst thing about this sort of putty is if you absolutely ruin your model and you're unhappy and you decide to strip the paint, you will also strip the putty off, and that will require a prime look putty resand. So sometimes it's better to sand paint off, sometimes it's better to strip paint off. You know the prep work you've done, the putty work, all that sort of stuff. You're the master to pull the trigger and make that decision. Have a quick nip. Now, before I sat down and started working on this project, this morning I booted up the airbrush and decided to do a little bit of base coating or color camouflage coating on my Type 94 by IBG models in 70-second scale. I'm going for that traditional late war Imperial Japanese armor look. The little yellow stripe and their iconic camouflage look. I've always got the Mr. Hobby paint set in hands. We'll be using blue tack to mask it. We'll mask the little yellow lines, then brown, then green. Though, how many colors are there? 3 shades of shit and green. Oh, I like that. Three shades of shit. So yeah, that would definitely be the go. And before I finish, I'll mask it up a bit, spray paint on it, and shall head off to work for the week. And we'll be back Thursday, and intend to do a stream on Friday and Saturday, maybe Sunday, probably most definitely Sunday. 3 streams in a row do want to work up to the goal of getting not a partnership, but the other one. Partnership's the big one. Affiliateship. Become an affiliate with Twitch, and that gives me all sorts of handy and useful tools. Now, that's on the proviso that some sort of audience is built. I probably should get into the habit of regular streaming patterns, though, as this is an overall grind. I do have to put other life aspects first, and YouTube is generally a priority, as that's the big project that I've been working on for almost 10 years now. So what do you know? That's not too far from 5,000 subscribers, which is just absolutely insane. It is what it is. Right now, we're polishing the inside frame with 1500 grit sandpaper, and just making it look like it contours to the rest of the plastic and whatnot. When it's all painted and done, it looks like this cutout was meant to exist. So comparing the 2 hours we did last week and the little amount of time that I'll be putting in today, gives you a bit of an idea of cutting out parts and cleaning them up and all of that fancy sort of footwork. Dry it up a bit and we'll get a rough. So this is a rough one where the putty is rough around the hole, and this is a clean one. And even though just glancing at them at quick, they don't look too different, looking them together now, you can see that this is a little uneven and unedged. What's this one? This one is smooth one, and that one's all rough. So the idea is once paint and everything is on it, it's going to look desirable. It's not going to stand out for the wrong reasons. The model should overall stand out from other models, but certain aspects, unless you want to drag the eye there on purpose, shouldn't really be standing out at all. So if it's standing out, it normally means there's something wrong with it and it looks like it just doesn't belong. Alright, so part number 3, working away at this putty. It's been drying since more than 24 hours ago. Applied early hours Sunday morning, and this is the middle of the morning, early morning or the end of the night Monday. I've got home from work. I had a jolly good sleep, something to eat. A few good anime on at the moment. Saw episode 3 of the new Sword Art Online, the Gun Gala. It's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. And Persona 5, and that has it's a lot darker than I played one of the Persona games 3, and I watched the show for 3 and 4, and they were mediocre. And I was almost completely prepared to give up on the whole franchise of shows and whatnot, though just decided to check out the pilot episode. And it has a completely different take. Very, very dark, all focused around a high school and a very, very abusive teacher. And the whole go, which I assume that this particular sports teacher is going to be the final big boss. And you can see the deadline looming of some meeting coming up, and the kids involved are going to get expelled as delinquents. And everyone does have like sort of a delinquency aspect to them at this rundown school, though they all turn out to be good, misunderstood people that are just not quite fitting in the whole mold of Japanese society or whatnot. So that's all pretty cool. And it's being told that we know what the conclusion is, and the kid's being interrogated by the police, and is just looking back and remembering and telling the story episode by episode, what exactly went down and if he was successful or not. And the fact that he had the living piss beaten out of him and is miserable and bruised and battered in jail. We're not too sure if his whole plan was successful or not, and we're just playing it by ear from episode to episode. So that's all very good and fun. So what are we doing? We're still on 240, and we're still very lightly moving material. It can be very tempting to put our force down and speed up the process, though from experience, this just prolongs it. Removing a little amount of material will save you a lot of time, even though it feels like it's the longer run. Being how soft this material is, it's very easy to shred up, leave holes and tears, and they'll have to be puttied and sanded again. And if you go hard again, you shred more, and it's a very bad cycle. I have been there before, last year and the year before, as I was slowly learning this material. And even though I've done a tutorial and demonstrated a good use of it, I haven't really mastered it after I utilized it on updating kits and almost consumed an entire bottle of the stuff. Though now I'm able to use less, and I'm more efficient and quicker and better with it, and generally really enjoy using the product. Which I should probably do a follow-up review, but I think if anyone who has seen the sandpaper tutorial, you put one and one together, you might catch up with a stream like this or something, and it just all the information and knowledge falls into place. And that's why I like to make as much content as possible, all catalogued in a way where people looking up where they're trying to get an answer, and things just fall together for them as well in getting the ideal finish that they are trying to achieve and improve into the modeler they generally want to be. Just got to make sure that the screen isn't going to die out or go into some sort of screensaver or something. What we also did the last stream was on the edge here we carved a panel using just the back of our knife, no fancy chiseling tool or specialty item or anything, and that resulted in a pretty successful thing going. So that's all right. We still got some little detail to go there, something to go on top of that. Probably dig through the photo etch thing and put a little something small elsewhere. That would finish this collection of parts very nicely. Because the legs are very big, they're very barren. I don't want to flood it with decals, but I just want to have some areas that are just open to enjoy the candy chrome, and other areas to just have little darting selection of detail that makes perfect sense to be there or not. Now, Gunpla Builders World Cup for all nations. There are dates being announced where things are running and opening up for registration and all that. But we still don't have a set of rules. We promised February, got pushed to March. Now it's being pushed for mid-April. There's nothing here. I keep checking the Gundam info page. A lot of people are assuming last year's rules. And I'm not entering, though I am putting out a watch to make sure that what's going on is very transparent and fair, and share it out with you guys. So as soon as something happens, you bet I'll make a post on social media about it immediately, and that week spin out a video in a way that would make sense to follow. Because there's just so much happening in the background, and there's just so many, restrictions and whatnot that's just not communicated well or communicated at all. And that is absolutely frustrating. It used to be a bit of a dream and an event that I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed. And with just a bunch of things that have occurred in a domino state, it's a bit cringy and does leave behind very, very sour memories and unfortunate lost friendships. But shit happens. New projects are on the horizons, and there are about 1,000 ways to enjoy the hobby. You can go down the competition route, the gallery route, the creation route, all sorts of things. And I'm going on a completely different journey that I will tell the truth. I am absolutely thoroughly enjoying it. It's just something that is completely different. So we're down to the final part. This whole polishing thing isn't as hard as what we did last night. That took the better part of an hour. This is just making very, very quick, easy work. Before I do that, we'll show off. This is the Imperial Japanese tank I was talking about that I'm painting up. Did it with SMS yellow. Underneath is Gaia Note oxidized red. And we'll, once that's sitting around for a few hours, because that got applied a little more than half an hour ago. Once that's sitting around for a couple of hours, we will sausage on a fine amount of blue tack. And we'll put the next coat of paint on, utilizing the Mr. Hobby set. And that should make for some very, very quick work, quick, fun, easy tank. They weren't made in greater numbers, and even though it had wide use, it's not very well documented. So I'll probably have it more on a parade look than a heavy dug-in battle look. Though the Japanese weren't too heavy with their tank deployments due to shortages of materials and stuff. So generally they were held back until absolutely, most definitely needs to be utilized. Just checking on a notification. So going back to sanding of the putty, and I think I've gone maybe a little too heavy because it has collected quite a bit in the corner there. And I shall actually use a bit of force to go from a rounded filleted edge to a more of a corner edge. And that sanded out quite nicely actually. I need to do a bit of sanding on the inside as well. And just keep working the material without shredding it, without going too hard, till we have our ideal smoothness. Okay, so truth be told, I'm actually almost starting to get sick of looking at this part. There's about 4 to 5 more things I need to add. The next steps are going to be very quick. I'll get some pre-cut styrene and just chop it in the right areas. I've got my lovely, lovely file plate, and that would make a quick work of the cleanup of the styrene strips. Glue them straight into place. Chop up and modify distorted part to go on the flap to make that a bit more interesting looking. And let's suppose we're absolutely laughing. And yeah, absolutely wearing away at the material. So this week in uploads, this morning at midday, I'll have a video uploaded. It's scheduled, and we'll do all that itself. It's not a very big or special video, sort of more of a filler content, which last Friday was asking for Q&A. So I suppose things would be a bit disappointing in our channel for 2 consecutive videos. But that's okay. The stuff following after that's going to be pretty good. The last Q&A sessions, which the conclusion of that will be this Friday. Not a lot of questions at the moment, but I'm sure that will build up once I start sourcing from Facebook. that would normally be a 20 to a 40-minute video packed with all sorts of good talky goodness. But the filler video we have today is honing your airbrush quickie under 5 minutes, and it's where I've got my premium Ophir. It has a very funny needle and nozzle. The nozzle is very, very thick brass, so generally, unless I'm very careful, it's not going to damage or wreck. The needle is standard stainless, and that can sustain damage, which the last one did from someone dropping my airbrush on a hard floor, and it actually distorted and broke the whole thing. So I was able to craft a new needle out of an existing Heising needle. Now the taper of the Heising needle is far too long, and putting it in there just sticks out of the crown and splutters and does all sorts of stuff. Though if I chopped the taper in half and re-honed the tip into a nice sharp tip, it performed quite well, atomized, and produced sufficiently nice lines. Now, mind you, it didn't spray as well as the original, though it's not too bad until I have some sort of there it is. Until I have some sort of replacement come in. The replacement's already in, and I'm using it all properly now and everything, but at the time needed to do some airbrushing, and for $1 airbrush I was able to get the whole rig working again. And yeah, that was absolutely choice. Quite a rewarding experience, and it was a very good experiment playing and just pushing the conditions of your airbrush. Going into airbrush talk, that last year was a big anniversary birthday for Badger, and they did this invitation thing where you could actually order any airbrush you want from their line at the manufacturer cost something like $50, and then you put shipping on top of that. So you're looking at about $70 for any Badger you want. And you could have as many as you wanted per type. You couldn't have like multiples of the same type. So, you know, you get like a big retail selection going or something. So I got the chrome and another one, the two most expensive, finest 0.2 mil airbrushes. And they're like multi-$100 airbrushes. Got the two for well under $200. One has arrived and the second one has been dispatched. And I'm looking at it, and it's packaged very poorly, and it's just a bare minimum. The airbrush, a wrench, airbrush, a wrench, and the adapter from 1/8 inch hose to the Badger size. And that is probably the most expensive and specialist professional airbrush I own. And it'll be very good to test that and compare it with everything else I've used, from the cheapest of the cheap of the Chinese line, the really old, bad, dodgy Chinese airbrushes from way back, and something that is considered to be a professional top-line airbrush that's not something like Iwata, which they're nice, but they're not that far from the Chinese-made ones. Now, we're coming to an end of the sanding of all of this, and it's getting quite smooth. We just got a bit of a build up on these two corners that needs to be honed into a proper nice corner shape, and we can move to 320 and polish up. Accidentally dropped the piece in the water. Call that done, and let's keep working at there's some crap on it. So I've got a little bit of debris in the water. So we'll just smooth it all out, make it so when primer goes on it, can't see any scratches, any marks, nothing. It's going to be quite lovely. Get rid of that. Yeah, it's been very quiet on the Twitch front for this week. Last week was once I figured out communities and groups and all that sort of thing. It was absolutely popping. Though this morning, yeah, sort of not much going on. Though I suppose I'm trying different times, different days, different lengths. We've only been on for 40 minutes, so we'll see what goes on. Though I think I need to just find the right time, start scheduling, and do the odd really long session to sort of pick up bypasses or whatever. Maybe this is a weird time that there really just isn't anybody, or that there really isn't anybody tuning in at all in any of the major continents that are of the English-speaking persuasion. So we'll see how we go, and we'll keep trucking along, I suppose. I think I might look into joining the Gunpla Builders Association. They seem to have a very, very good Twitch program going, and that's where all the major Gundam Twitch modelers seem to be at. That could be kind of cool. Alright, so that's alright. We're going to polish out the rims with the 1500. Give it an overall polish. And crack out some styrene for, or to be at least used as vent wings or fins or whatever you call it. Something that's very aircraft-like. Let's polishing up. It's going to look pretty sweet once I throw some primer on it. Can't wait. But yeah, maybe this, looking at the other kits, I've done some cutouts and interesting stuff. The most hardcore work would have been on the shoulders, which, fuck, I think I've probably been at that for about a month. And these legs. These legs have really, really, really taken their toll, though they're coming out quite nicely. Now, I suppose the interesting thing is instead of taking the kit bashing routes and just getting parts and incorporating it into it, I've almost been using everything indigenous to this model and only adding styrene and other bits and pieces. And just playing with the existing detail that was given to me. So that is a lot of fun. Now, we'll bust out the modeling support goods minus molds. Now, the part wholesale isn't quite going to work out just by cutting it out and directly gluing it. Though there's nothing wrong with hacking the hell out of the part. And I'm thinking this size here is probably the most, I wouldn't say the word realistic, but more cool-authentic. Cut it out. Have a bit of a look. I do love these modeling support good stuff, though they are grossly outdated and far too chunky. So that looks good. We will remove the nubs, clean it up. Got all the sandpaper deployed and ready to go. These parts do seem to be very, very close to the runners in the gate, so you can't really fit nippers in there to do a nice clean cut. Sliding a knife in there is good enough of a job. And being a circular part, try to do the majority of the we'll try to do the majority of the nub removal via knife and less by sanding, as to not flatten the contour of the rounded surface. Which, even if I do that, it's not going to be overly noticeable. But it's something to keep an eye out for. It's a good practice to be in. Sanding up a storm. And the beautiful thing about sandpaper is it sort of hugs around the surface and just wears away at the rounded bit. If you use a file, it's only going to just flatten it and creates a very flat surface. And that's not exactly what we are looking for or we want. Now we're not going to use the part as is. Like I said, it's very outdated. It's overly chunky and far too big, and just adding it on like that does not look good at all. Though I think if we sand it up and cut it down and file it down, it can be quite interesting. So pulling out the sanding file or the plate file, we're going to put it face down and wear it down so it is a lot thinner. And this tool is just going to make absolute quick work of it and do it in an even fashion. We do need to lift it to look at it, and I'd like it to meet the center bit. I'll just keep filing down, spin it around slightly so it's working out. And when I start getting a bit of white going on the centerpiece, it's going to be at the thickness that I desire. Very, very, very close. Pretty much like a couple of microns away. Or groups of 10 microns away. Yeah, that's ideal. That's nice and thin or flat. We can compare the two. As you can see how they're completely different. I'll sand the other side so that's also a lot thinner. And we'll just get it as fine as we can humanly get it. Clean down the plate a bit. And there we go. That's almost as thin as a coin. And probably more of a profile that is more fitting of a Gundam part than a lot more fatter Kotobukiya part. It's a little harder to wear down, but it's happening. Okay, so that's good. I like that. That is, looking at it, that is as thick as I want it to go. Now, we mimic it and make it parallel or mirrored. The same proportions on both sides. Okay. Shit. This one's a little harder to do, but that's probably because my fingers are a bit rougher and tired from doing the first one. You do have to be careful not to push your wrists, fingers, and all that, because that's a quick way of getting arthritis or something. And that would make modelling not as fun in a very, very quick period of time. Alright, so just keep manually working it. I'm probably pushing down a little too hard to speed it up. This is purely from impatience. All it really does is just tires you out. This is from Mishima. It is the large coarse plate file. Absolutely wonderful tool. Yes. Now we'll just compare the two height-wise. Yeah, I just got to. We're going to do a little bit of the bottom, and then we're going to mess with it further. So then it's going to be unrecognizable. from the other bits. And if you can see that it's starting to leave a lot of material behind and it's filling up the whole thing with dust, you know you are definitely removing a sufficient amount of material. All right, we'll compare the two, and they are just as flat as each other. Very, very cool. So put that away. Next tool. Nice hobby file. Very, very old. Bought in the early 2000s. Bone saw. So what I will do is make a mark first, exactly where I want to make the cut, so it doesn't become crooked. I'm going to cut it in half, and it's going to be a very interesting, almost vent-like feature. And again, the Gundam marker comes in handy very easily. There we go. So we coarse it just a little bit with the knife, the blade, so we've got a bit of a groove to work with. And we'll do that a few times until we're so deep it's not going to pop out and scar the plastic. Sort of squarish enough, I suppose. Don't want to cut in an angle. Thought I heard a sound. I'll be back. Yeah. Okay, where were we? So we're cutting up these minus molds. It's clearly not this one, but course it anyway. Okay. And another way you could do that is, if you're not doing a good enough job with the saw, where you've got the drawn marks, get a hobby knife, cut in the material, and just twist it around a bit, side to side. And it gives you that slight V-groove that the teeth of the saw can really dig into it. And that's probably a far better one than trying to course it with teeth saw or teeth blades or saw blade, whatever. You know what I mean. So we do a couple of passes. Making sure we're going down the right channel. And backwards and forwards. And there we go. 2 clean halves. That could be sanded up a bit. And that is a completely different original component. That is nothing like what we sourced. That's a hacking component. It's nothing like we sourced. From the minus mold set. So that means when people look at it, they don't go, oh, I recognize that coated Bakir bit. Instead, they'll think it's something that's completely scratch built. It's a syndrome known as Panzer IV in outer space, where someone recognizes a part that just doesn't belong, that they know is added for detail, but it belongs for something else, or it's recognizable to a certain set. And it kind of takes away the illusion of the model. So by hacking away at this minus mold, we have managed to turn it into something completely interesting. Chopped it, sanded it down, applied it around a few places, and it's just its own unique thing now. Next, we'll play around with its orientation and see how it can look good on that thruster piece. There we go. So all of those is nicely cut out. Let's sort out orientation. You can either have it in that direction, which looks a bit silly, or the wall facing inward, which looks pretty interesting. I think that with probably a few smaller details applied elsewhere, and a bit of a tube somewhere, that could be the way to go. Go look at a side profile to make sure it looks good when you're looking at the Gundam front on. And yes, that is exactly what we're looking for. With the 1500 grit, there is a lot of hairy plastic around the place that's just going to be picked up by glue and whatnot, and sort of just scar the plastic up a bit. So we'll wipe that away with the grittiness of the sandpaper. It's just like a weird plastic hair. Cut that out. Excellent. And just polish up these parts ready for gluing in the 4 respected locations. And that would make for very interesting hinges for upper vents. That's a bit of detail, even though it is from a traditional Kotobukiya modelling support set and it's been around for about 15-20 years. It's virtually going to be completely unrecognizable except for the people who probably followed this, the work in progress, or got a weird way where they could break components up in layers a lot like a CNC CAM software would. Then those sort of people are a bit too keen. It's worse than any modeler otaku, or it transcends the rivet canning. Like, not negative rivet canning, but the traditional getting the proportions and detail down absolutely flat, perfect in scale and in a historical universal setting and environment. The overall goal to scale modeling is to create an illusion of scale and a time and space and time that may have existed or not existed or be complete fantasy, and creating it in the physical world for people to view and enjoy. We'll bust out our cements, extra thin and extra thin quick type. Even though they are both standalone cements, the quick type does make for a very good accelerant. It has been brought to my attention that it is not its intent use, though experimenting, playing with it and using it as such, and even having from people from Tamir confirm it and talk to me, not the documented way to use it, but its chemically formulation and its possibility that the way that I do use it is entirely appropriate and a good idea. It's not unsafe, it produces a good result, and it works out. So we glued the piece down. Might need a small rod to meet in the center just as a nice gesture. And that's our little fin that we're going right up against the frost vent hole. We've got the huge cutouts for the inner frame of the master grade to be completely visible. And it's all coming together. It's all working very, very nicely. Next, we'll do the vent flaps. And I want to bust out some photo etch, pick through it, and just be a bit playful with this same vent again. Though we've got 4 vents to glue these onto. This one again. So these are the 2 outer legs facing outwards. They're nice and open. And the 2 inner ones, and that would just sit flank on. There is a bit of scarring on these 2, so I didn't do a very good cleanup job. Sand it up ever so quickly. So I did the accounts for the Salt Mine fundraiser to buy an injection molding machine, as well as to utilize metal 3D printing to produce stainless molds. To make my own series of aftermarket parts and to test the machine out, I need to raise approximately $7,000. I have so far raised $4,000 until this point. I've had a few months of accumulated sales through the Salt Mine shop. After figuring that out, there's a combined total taking of $1,800 something. And you can't just spend money, you need to put back in. I split that in half. Half has gone back into restock of essentials, tools, airbrush parts, airbrushes, promotional stickers, and bags, a couple of consumables. I've got a few big shows coming up. And the other $900 or $800 is gone straight into the kitty. So that has pushed it over to $5,200. We have less than $2,000 to raise, with 2 big events and 2 months of general online sales. That is very, very hopeful. Things are definitely looking up in that regards. It looks like our June deadline can potentially be met. Still got some wholesale orders, some other sales that haven't gone through yet, and I'm hopeful at least a minimum of $1,000 will be made at the Australian IPMS Model Expo. I've ordered all sorts of goodies. Watch gears and steampunk parts, putties, tools, like 6 airbrushes, 4 compressors, actually more closer to 10 airbrushes, ton of parts, just all sorts of goodies. So what a wholesale look of what $600 worth of tools and bits and pieces look is pretty awesome. This is generally one of the biggest orders I've ever done. I think the biggest I've ever did was a kit order of over $1,000. And that was from Japan, all secondhand items. That was a lot of models, like quite a few of them I scored around the $5 mark. So we're talking about, it was about just short of 100 kits. And there was some resin, some big stuff, some Zoids, all sorts of goodies. So I will have to be excused from the camera for about 30 seconds to move some boxes around. I will keep talking. I do have a bits box of spare parts, plastic rods, all sorts of goodies. When I was talking about the Badger airbrush, they're known to come in very nice fancy boxes, and it just came like that. So you can see that it's quite a bit on the Spartan side of things. Alright, that's all sorted. So we've got the leg here, and we did the little work on the cross plate. Show off the look of how it's assembled. And it just sits in like so. You can see all of that inner detail. Put these away. Let's go. Oh, that's heavy. Digging through a bits box and find the plastic rods and bits and pieces and stuff we're going to need for this immediate work, and for other sections of the legs. Oh, cool, I got a bag of lollies. So this is pretty cool. It is a bit on the thick side, and that could work. I'll put that aside. That's no good to me. I'll need a length of that. This is a whole Zoid. The glue I'll utilize. I want some half rod. And as soon as I asked for half rod, this came along. This is kind of like a corner rod. A little bit of putty will be used, so I'm going to put that as a maybe. This is a circular rod. Half rod fit way better. It's a big piece. This works nicely too, so that's a maybe. When you've got a large, ooh, that's good. That could be good for something. when you have such a large collection of rods and strips and bits and pieces, the possibilities for scratch building becomes absolutely endless. The shape is partially formed. It just it's a bit big. So if this small one works for that, this big one works for that. Yeah, those two work. I got the calipers out somewhere. I want to find a couple of more half rod. That's a square rod. Well, if it's square, then it's not a rod at all. It's just a square piece. And that is far too thick, so that won't work. Though, with this corner thing, if I use this in reverse, oh, that's perfect in reverse. I should have done that first. Use that. Put that back. Keep these. And just dig for a couple of minutes longer just to see if I find anything else of merit. Oh, I remember that. This could be useful for something. Put that aside. So that would be a tribute to the second Gunpowder Builders World Cup entry. Checker plates, not quite right in scale, so not appropriate to pull out. And this is some square plates. Don't know if that's appropriate. That's just good to know that I've got that as a backup. Oh, this is a humongous catch of gun barrels for various tanks and bits. Wargaming diorama base. These are very expensive. I don't want them falling out and losing them. This is a humongous collection of rods. This is a short one, so I might put that aside. It could be useful for the feet or something. Now this is amazing. Bought that not long ago. And there's 2 sheets of it. Gonna have to cut some of that off. And deploy it. So this is a really good vent-like material, or it can be used as flooring. It's all sorts of potential. Actually, we'll just fuck off the packaging altogether. So that's just in the way. We'll cut off small amounts. Again, good use of the gunner marker. This I'll cut in half. This I'll cut in half. Chuck that in there. Cut a length of this off. I just love this to pieces. I'm surprised I haven't pulled it out for a while. I need to dig through this more often. I haven't been in here for like a year. So I savaged this for... and a couple of these squares. And that is it for rating our styrene sheet thing. We'll pull out our little trophies. And this lot will make very quick work of the legs and the backpack. Okay, so pulling these 4 bits out, we already know the first part we want to play with. Where is it? There it is. And it's this right angle corner piece. So we've got to find the right way, which will just have it slightly sticking out in both ends. Mark it with a Gundam marker. And slice it with our hobby knife. And replicating it 4 times. For our 4 locations. Okay. That's 1. This is 2. Right, didn't get a good measure up. Right there. 2. Using the first piece to cut out, not every other piece, because it'll either gradually get bigger or gradually get smaller. And 3. Awesome. Put that aside in case we need to use that again. Plate file out. Let's go backwards and forwards to square it up slightly. And glue it right in place to achieve the look we are, well, looking for. Three and 4. Excellent. Get rid of that. Pull out the cement and glue that little section again. We are, however, running dangerously low on glue, so we're going to have to be purchasing some in the near future. We've got some on the spot. Pick up the little part, slot it right in place. beautifully. Do the same for the next piece. The accelerator. And stuck on nicely. There we go. Two more to go. There will be a bit of sanding that'll be done. That could be done tomorrow just to tidy it up, make sure everything's joining nicely together. Okay, that's not quite convincing itself into place. Yeah, this is ideally the little bit of detail that we exactly needed. Yes. I have to switch the bottle around just to make the glue touch the tip of the brush. Alright, time check. Hour, 20 minutes. We'll keep this to a 2.5 hour stream, pretty much like the other ones. There we go. That's a really, really close, nice fit. Again, we'll definitely have to be sanded up a bit, though not too much of a big deal. So next, we'll do that plate there. So get the sand plate. And some calipers. The digital ones are out of power. It's always good to have a manual one. $19 mil. Okay. Very good. Course the line with the hobby knife. Snap and sand. Compare the length. It's a good fit. And we just need to produce another 3 of them. Go. Piece number 2. snap. And send. Number 3, and then one more. Three. And this should be the last one. That's not the original. I think that one's the original. If any of them's too big, we could just file it down a little further, and that will do the trick. Cool. Put that away. Wear down both ends. And we are laughing. So that goes there. Yeah. Pick it up and give it a bit of putty glue. Alright. And the accelerator. Right down where we want it. Excellent. 3 more times. Nice healthy amount of glue. Now these flaps are very boring, so there's going to be a little bit of detail that needs to be applied. We just need to have a bit of edging on it. So I think I pretty much sure know how I'm going to achieve that. So that's not a big deal. And just try to bring it away from the original provenance as much as possible. And just have the legs almost completely different. I mean, it's still very Providence-like. Accelerant goodness. Cool. Yeah, I know how to get what I'm looking for. We'll utilize the grill bit. You can make some sort of a hinge-looking device. Nah, that's a good idea. We'll be able to do it all in stream too. So have this all nicely detailed. Okay, last flap, and then we'll do the smaller flaps, which is this material, and it's gonna go over here. That's going to be nicely raised and whatnot. Got an idea for an interesting bit of detail, so I could cut that out and use it now. Ooh, that flew. These little squares look like tiny armor panels. Didn't have to go too styrene plate heavy with the other components of the Providence, but the legs are just that boring. Something needs to be done. And I've just been worried about it for a while and a while and a while. And now finally playing with it and just letting the imagination roll on stream, because all I really knew that I wanted to do was just a huge cutout. After the cutout, it's just falling into place, really. Okay. One, two, we're going to make a marking with the Gundam marker. Okay, so we can put the other two in a way that makes sense and get it all more so symmetrical looking. Okay, cool. We can apply these last two armor blocks. Yep. One. And two. Move that ever so slightly. And it's all matching up. So back to originally what we were doing. So cracking out the calipers. 16. Okay. Alright. Done. This is going to be quite a bit of fun. More fun than I thought I'd have. And better off done at home than out and about. So I've got the full catalogue of parts at my disposal. Two more to cut out. Last cut. Excellent. Ooh, that works. That looks like that's a fit. Mmm. The feet also has me a bit stumped. So we'll just do a little bit of stone work here and there. Won't go too hard on the feet. Feet's not too noticeable. It's going to be majority red. It's not like the washers and whatnot's going to pick up on it too well. Yeah, that jumps out a lot more than just being a molded bit of thing. Being an actual cutout styrene strip makes it bounce so much more. Okay, bit of glue, bit of accelerant, and these parts are really starting to jump now. So I'm really standing on its own. Starting to, so at first I thought the feet would be so boring. Then now, well, and the legs, and now I kind of can't wait to see what it's going to look like with primer and paint on it. Sort of like all the other components. Even the gun, I thought the gun was going to be so boring, and that's turned out to be on the exciting side of the spectrum. Really coming out to be a designer Gundam. Okay. Now, I've had a bit of an oops. There's a little too much glue leaked. So we're going to just wipe it back a bit and make a notation of where the scarring is occurring. So we can go past and sand that at a later date. Mistakes do occur, and it's nothing too much to fret about. There's nothing that can be done right now. So we'll just carry on. Whatnot. Time check, hour 40 minutes. Once we're done with these, we probably should call it quits. So I also want to do a coat on the Imperial Japanese tank. Okay. All right. Now, we need to get this edging on. Okay, so we've got a bit of an edge there. It's the beautiful thing about these really thin styrene strips. These make for great detail no matter where you go. I think we'll just cut 3 strips of it and just glue all 3 of them down. So use this really thin stuff all over the place. Don't want to use it too much on the bottom bits. Get a bit chunkier because it's lower to the ground. Though for the flaps, since the flaps are very chunky, some subtle detail wouldn't go too far. Okay, cool. So we can save the rest of that for some other parts of the kit. And process of elimination to get along every strip. Okay, nice. Wait until we get to the hinge part. The hinge is going to be awesome. Cool. One more edge to go. And then we'll have the hinges next. Just push that down a bit. Excellent. I gotta check to make sure none of it's lifting. These two are lifting, so just give it a bit of pressure. That's not lifting at all. Excellent, excellent. So we're going to use the grill bit as hinging. And how I want to do it is two strips at a time, sort of like the join or something like that. I don't know. It'll make sense when it's down to me at least. Or how raised detail just makes sense. Okay. Right, so put that there. And each flap gets two hinges. Okay. And I probably should have marked out exactly where the hinges go, but I'll do it by eye, so that's alright. Not a big deal. Yeah. That's exactly what it's meant to look like. That's it. That's perfect. Okay, so this could be the hinge for the flap thing. Okay, cool. And that could piss off. One. Two hinges for the other flap. After these hinges, I reckon it is it's probably going to be I was thinking it's a photo etch, but that might be too much now. So the hinges just kind of add what I'm looking for. There's something I need to add to the top, so I'll look at the photo etch bin, see what I can find for the top. No, I don't think there's anything in the photo etch bin for the top. So I think there's this one part here that will do the trick for us. Okay. So there we go. That is the modified part we are more or less trying to pull off. So I've got to do more of those hinges, and just something about that just doesn't rub me the right way. I need to do something about it. What do I have here? A little square on the top. Yeah, that works. So that problem's been solved. I'll just quickly put the calipers away, as we'll not be using that after we're gluing down our last half a dozen parts or so. Hey, seriously, these legs are exactly what I'm looking for. Make sure they're all the right orientation. So we've got 3 hinges. We may as well focus these on the minus mold hinge, or the minus mold flat. Oh, get in there, you bastard. There we go. Another one in there. Oh, shit. Shit, son. Yeah. Alright. We're going to have to cut out some more hinges. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 more hinges. With the gun the marker. Sweet. So that's done. This is our example. This is what we're going to try to pull off. Cool, that's one. This one's number 2. And all of this will get a bit of a sanding and a polishing before the primer stage. So hopefully next week the painting will start on this guy or these collection of parts. That would be the goal at this stage. Two. So at the moment it is definitely looking on the interesting side of things. And we've demonstrated quite a bit of styrene work and scratch building in this little presentation. So that's alright. Oh, okay, that could be a little too heavy. Dab a tiny amount of weight. We're going to stick. Yay. Alright. So that's another part done. Another one. Come on, separate. Yeah. One, two. Yeah, this is crazy good. And the raised detail is really a nice swing back to the 80s style. Sort of all this recessed business. Excellent. Now we only need 3 more. And then we shall get that last part done. I feel like there's something that should be going on there. But I reckon that would be too saturated if I started scratching stuff there. Maybe a panel line could do the trick though. I think there just needs to be some open space and that could be playful with decals. sure none of that falls asleep. 2 hours in, not too bad. Definitely have some. It definitely suggests flaps now. Instead of just being a vent hole, it's a vent hole with actual flaps over it that can open and close and control the draft of the flaps and stuff. Just like an aircraft, fighter jet type thing. Okay. Dog just woke up. Sort of stretching and repositioning himself and all that sort of business. Alright. Last bit. We've gone a long way in this 2 hours regarding the detailing of these parts. Look at that. Do a quick comparison by chucking this on here and having a look. Oh no, that works. I didn't have to put that bit here. I won't put too much. Yeah, that works. That works really well. The chunkiness of the detail, the chunkiness of the inner frame. We've got a serious story to tell here. Yeah, that works beautifully. Couldn't be any more happier. So I'll add 4 more bits of detail. I think we'll call it quits. Will be a bit of a shorter stream. So it's not a big deal. So this is a Wave aftermarket part. What's going on? Isn't wanting to get in. Two, 3, 4. And those 4 parts work. Very fragile looking. 2, 3, 4. Let's see if we can clean it up a bit better. So tiny, you can virtually not sand the bloody thing. Yeah, that works. I think maybe I should rub it on the sanding file slightly. So I think it might be undergated. If it's undergated, that means it's not going to sit on anything smoothly whatsoever. Alright, that would have solved any of the undergate issues. Chuck some glue on it. Chuck her into place. Oh yeah, that was definitely undergated. Oh, and that's a huge improvement. Now I like it. So, do this 3 more times. Oh, no. I almost put glue on it without addressing the undergate. Alright, sorted. Now we can glue it. These wave details are far more nicer and appropriate for Gundam kits than the Kodo ones are. They're just not as available. Okay, so just compare that the two are symmetrical. They are. Very good. I'll have to take a photo of these and plaster it around online. Mm. Ooh, almost lost that. Okay. Done. Get the plate file. Let's go backwards and forwards a few times. Get rid of that undergate. And these are the last pieces to go on. Anyone that is following the stream or the video, we've just gone from something that only had one bit of styrene here to it being quite detailed and over 2 streams, so about 5 hours of work. This part cut out, puttied, cleaned up, little panel lines put in, all sorts of stuff. So it's quite heavily detailed now. Very, very, very exciting stuff. And because a lot of the newer Gundam stuff is just very bland, very not so detailed, and the Providence is a little, it's different from the others. It is quite interesting, very smooth detail. It's almost like a Xeon kit than the hard edge of a Gundam or something. Putting more hard edges on it sort of just makes it a bit more Gundamish. Yeah, that all works out very, very, very well. Yeah, the legs are just plain and boring as hell. Absolutely hate the Providence legs. Love the torso. Love the arms, and the backpack's the best thing. The legs are just dreadful. I suppose it is partially obscure and obstructed by the awesome funnel skirt thing that's going on. So, it is what it is. Anywho, we'll start putting some bits and pieces away. Those 4 are our modified leg pieces. There we go. I almost feel I've kind of got my creativity and inspiration back again after pulling that. I haven't done anything heavy kit bashing, scratch building for a very long time. The Providence is a very, very minor intervention on my part. Though once I start work, because that's probably because I really like and enjoy the kit and sort of doing homage to it. Of the legs, since I've really disliked and hated the legs and didn't have much drive or inspiration to go around it, pummeling at it for a while really created something. So there we go. That would be for the work in progress thread. Arms. Huh. Oh no, that belongs there. It's this one here. And that's the gun. So that needs to stay closed. That is fairly important. This thing. We'll use this to store the extra scratch building parts. All of these rods and detailed sheets and whatnot really save the day. Now, what's left over is these bits and pieces. They're still quite rough. Bit of sanding, cutting, polishing is required. And I still got a bit of playing around to do with the feet. Got a little idea roughly what I want to do, but it's not going to be too much. Just a touch of styrene work, and we'll leave it at that. What's meant to go on top? These bits, so how's that meant to look? Okay, so I just removed more material. It's got that bit there. Though I wonder, instead of inscribed, it can become, because it's sunk in. Normally sunken details superior nicely, or nice. I wonder if giving it some outer detail wouldn't kill it. Yeah, fuck it, let's do it. Push this to the 2.5 hour. Why not? Why not indeed? These two bits look like they could fit. It will need to be Gundamized a bit because it is overly too chunky, as we've discussed about the Koto detail. Alright. I'll have those two bits out. I'll use the arm bag, even though they're not arms. Alright. So get rid of these nubs. You got nubs on your aftermarket parts as well as all the other parts. It sort of makes you lose a bit of hope, doesn't it? Okay. Use the file on these ones, so it'll be nice and smooth. There we go. Can't feel anything on that. I think I've talked about the Tamiya file in the past few streams. There we go. Swish and swish. Okay, all clean. And for the other side. Sweet. Dog just fell out of its bed. That's pretty funny. Cool, didn't lose that bit. So I'll put these 4 aside to dry independently. And we'll file these down to be as thin as humanly possible. So they are far too thick. And the other side. This thing's great for just flattening down parts, the sand file. So let's have a look at that. Yeah, that's roughly what I'm after. I want to probably remove about about a mil to a mil and a half more. Alright, seeing quite a bit of material being left behind. Let's have a look at that now. Yep, that's about the thickness we're after. Just pry out that material, the hobby knife. And that's sort of the raisedness or the extrusion we would expect more of a Gundam kit than a Kotobukiya kit. And now it would not be too recognizable from the set. So it goes somewhere there. I have a styrene strip gun across down there. There'd be a little hole gun underneath. And that would make for some pretty interesting detail. So we'll just clean that out slightly bit more. Alright, cool. Now we'll copy the same thing on the other one. Clean these up as well. Alright. This thing's going to need a file and some putty. But we can get rid of most of the roughness, at least with the sand file. So that ultrasonic knife does make an absolute dog's dinner of some of these bits and pieces. Alright, that's nice and smooth. Though again, yeah, it's going to need some putty, more file, more sanding. So there's quite a bit of distorted plastic where the cut was made. Cool. Right. So now to mimic that to this piece. Correct orientation. Start doing the grind. Checking periodically to make sure the two are nice and level. One's not going in too much where the other one is. Probably putting a bit of force in because quite a bit of material has been removed in such a few amount of passes on this file. I do love this tool. So just get the material out, compare, probably a few more passes, and it can finally be glued into place. All right, good. Just get the two side by side. A couple more passes. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. Now that looks about identical, so that's good. And later on I can hit that with some polishing. That works out quite nicely. These are the two components. Only poke it up against the end or the edge so it doesn't widen any of the fins, distort any of the detail. Cool. And slap it directly in place. Now, it does look weird that it's a thruster upon a thruster. The lower thruster I'm going to do something about to obstruct that to make it look more like a vent or something that it's not already is. So there you go. That is it's pretty cool. You just got to make sure the next thing going in has the fins going in the correct orientation so they're not going against each other. Okay. And get some of that on there too. Awesome. Compare side to side. Just raise that ever so slightly. Done. This will need a tad more work, but whatever. It could be something done on the side, so what we're going to need is something going along here. Something along here and here. And that works. But it's already pretty heavily modified, so whatever. Put these out on the side. Chuck these in the bag, even though they are drying. They're not too fragile. So, got our bag of parts. All right. So put everything into the grater box, including the 4 pieces of sandpaper. These will go in last. And we'll get the tank bits. Some blue tack here. That yellow would have dried and matured and hardened sufficiently by now. Oh, look at this rate. We will make the 2.5 hours. So, fantastic. So, even though that's meant to be a Gundam stream, anime stream, all that sort of thing, sure, everyone can tolerate 10 minutes of tanks. Not if there's anyone watching, so I think I'll be able to get away with it. Yeah. Alright. So we'll do a very, very thin sausage out of blue tack. We'll cut it with the hobby knife. It needs to be thinner than that. But that's thin. That should do it. Take a photo of it for the work in progress. And we'll do the tank bit first. So we'll cut the weakest bit off first. Okay. So I'm going to need a toothpick. Make sure it contours to the areas it needs to. Alright, top. So paint can't seep underneath or anything stupid like that. Okay. Alright, cool. So, do we have a front picture? Yeah, we do. It's a nice big curve. Start somewhere like that. Curves. Then it goes up. Well, something like that. Yeah, that looks good. Good enough. And make sure that this contours. Normally I hand paint it, but this is the first time I'm airbrushing Imperial Japanese camouflage. Okay. Make sure it's contouring around the detail. It's not going to have paint flooding underneath or anything silly like that. We will be applying the paint in dry coats. So we'll get the two side shots. Not going to be too faithful to the instructions, though. These sort of things do have a tendency of being free-handed. Not two tanks of camouflage are exactly the same. Okay, and then we'll cut it off here. It's a bit too thin there, so we will better add a ball. There we go. Pushing that blue tack where it needs to be. Cool. So got another line. And we'll just thin this out a bit more. And that can come off the top of the turret. Excellent. Go off there. And that could go off something like that. Get more, so it's more coverage. Ah, you bastard, it just came off. All right. And we haven't quite pushed this in well enough yet. Yep. Make sure it's nice and pinched into every nook and cranny. Excellent. There we go. That's that. We need to pinch off a little more blue tack so we can do that. I'll make it nice and thin. Excellent. And we can start applying the yellow scheme. Awesome. Okay. Oh. try to remove the rest so the wheels can be painted green and all that at a later stage. Just got to make sure it's the same around there. Yep, it is. So we want green wheels. This green will be the final coat. Okay, cool. It's removed. Tuck it up a bit. And the other layers, the dark brown and light brown layers, it could be a little more forgiving. Okay. Right. Very cool. So that's good. And now just for the trailer. Or maybe I should have one more line of yellow on the rear armor thing. Yeah, one more line of yellow. Yeah, that looks good. So I really like that yellow stripe they do on the camouflage. It's just absolutely wild. Cool. Done. I'll just cut this in half. Okay. So that's on that. And the other side. Okay. And push down to pinch onto the edge of the surface, not to allow any bleeding. Excellent. That's all done. I think we're going to call that an end of the stream. Thank you very much, and catch you guys later. See ya.